Guys, we just had Hayk, he's
Hello.
joined us.
Hey guys, sorry, Zoom was stuck. I couldn't.
It's like we're waiting for you, and pretty cool. And people are joining in. People will take a couple of minutes more as they join in. Thank you so much for joining us here, at the Behavioral Science Club today. Typically, it is my co-host Louise who helps us with introductions, and she's fantastic at it. But the year has come to an end almost. It's almost Christmas time. She's taken a well-deserved vacation, rest. So I shall do the honors of introducing Hayk to everyone out here. So for people who are just about joining in, people who are about to join in, Hayk he's a serial entrepreneur. Uh, 2 failures, 1 exit. So overall, I think it's a fantastic record, right? So he's a business expert. He is specialized in innovation, behavioral sciences, and emerging technologies. Now, he also held um, senior roles in digital and business transformations with multinational firms in Europe, Africa, Asia. We're talking companies like Hewlett-Packard, TAGorg, we're talking Vonage. Now, in addition to all of this, since last year, 2019 July, Hayk is also running bizbias.co. It's one of the most comprehensive financial profiling system in Asia. And what does it mean? We'll find out about it in some time. Now, in addition to all of this, again, he's a man of who has multiple hats. He's also the expert in residence at SOSV, the biggest VC accelerator in the world.
That's right.
Now, apart from all of these, uh, there's a lot more to Hayek, right? And let's find out. Hayek, why don't you start with a small introduction about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, that sounds really grand, maybe a lot of what you say, but probably it's not. Guys, I was gonna ask you if there is an agenda or something. I'm used to kind of structurally going with what I'm supposed to talk about, but yeah, okay, little introduction. I'm originally from Armenia, but I kind of lived and studied. Now this is the 8th country outside of Armenia. So I studied physics. I mean, maybe I guess 2 words about my kind of a early life. I grew up in a technical family. My father was a physicist and my mom was an electrical engineer. I learned to play chess. I was, I think, 4. So eventually I went and played competitive chess in the country. Won a couple of times on a regional basis. I never had the time to go all the way up to the country level, but yeah, won a couple of times on regional basis. And that kind of chess mentality stayed with me, I guess, until now. And I think one thing that physics instilled in me, so I studied physics initially, and then I picked up business, I picked up IT. I'm saying I picked up because a lot of the stuff I initially started learning on my own. And I think what physics instilled in me early on, I mean, when I was at school, was that sense of curiosity, the sense of always trying to understand what's happening around me, what's happening to others, and trying to, I mean, it's a human mind thing, I guess. We all like to understand and kind of predict and act accordingly to what's going to happen to the others or to the environment we're in. So yeah, I mean, that kind of stayed with me, and throughout, well, so far my life, whatever I've done, a lot of it was driven by curiosity, I guess I would say that. Prakash, I don't know if you have any specific questions, or do you want me to kind of chronologically tell you?
We will go on the journey with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things I think that could potentially be of interest, I don't know, is that, for example, I ended up studying physics on a PhD level, which is kind of strange given I've never really wanted to be a physicist. So, I mean, I guess that's an interesting thing. So I did a bachelor, then a master, then a PhD, but I never really, even when I was starting a PhD, I already knew I'm not going to be a physicist, but I still went.
I will jump in here, Hayek, and
jump.
Yeah, like you make it all sound so grand. And I realized I actually did not do justice enough because I had no clue you were playing chess, right?
I used to play. Armenia is, has been Olympic champion for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. I haven't checked the last couple of years, but Armenians are known, probably even more known in some ways than Indians.
All right, Hayk, you don't have to brag. I mean, we know you are really good. You have all the degrees, but this is almost going down right now to a fantastic zone right now. You are.
Yeah. No, they were, I mean, nice world champion is Armenian. Kasparov is half Armenian. Gary Kasparov is half Armenian. There are a lot of, I mean, Armenians are just, it's like a national sport. Everyone plays chess. So it's nothing special that I play chess. I just played on a competitive level, but yeah, it's very common for everyone to play backgammon and chess back in Armenia. I think the part that could be interesting is that I ended up, as I said, doing a PhD level nuclear physics study, but I never wanted to be a physicist. I just like studying physics because that kind of gives me, that satisfies my curiosity, if you like, because I like to understand how things work. And part of that driving curiosity, that sense of curiosity, was also that while I was studying, I picked up on my own IT. So I started learning how to do software development and programming. And I think one thing you might not see on my LinkedIn is that it's very organic. So I started learning about internet, right? I read the RFPs for TCP/IP stack. I don't know how many of you are technical, but basically that's the protocols, that's the specification of how internet works. So TCP/IP is basically the foundation of how internet works, right? And I ended up becoming what you would now call an ethical hacker. So I started kind of trying and breaking into IT systems, not for any malicious intent, but just to show that I could, what they call in IT a proof of principle or proof of concept approach to see that I can do it. I ended up on a TV, with a blurred face when they would interview ethical hackers. And I got caught one time at my father's research institute doing it when I was, I think, 17 or 18. So, I mean, yeah, that kind of stuff you won't see on LinkedIn, but I'm sharing this is because it's the same curiosity. I didn't really intend or did anything bad, but just to see that I could do it, that I could learn and apply and kind of see the results of that learning. And then eventually, I think when the time came, I finished physics. Okay, so this I don't know if this is interesting, but I'll share it. So I learned French learning about Egyptian history. That's kind of very coincidental. So I was doing my PhD in Geneva in Switzerland, and I went there and I knew some French. I mean, I knew a little bit of grammar, but I didn't know I'm supposed to teach in French to native French speakers because apparently when you're doing a PhD, you have to teach, and I didn't know it. So I go there in July and they're like, hey, in October, you are supposed to teach in French to native French speakers about physics, the undergrad students. I said, I don't really speak French. They're like, here, some books you can read and bone up your vocabulary. So I spent the next 3 months basically boning up my vocabulary before October. So from July to October, and coincidentally, I was given books about Egyptian pharaonic history. So I ended up learning a lot about Egyptian ancient history and learning French. And then 4 years fast forward, and when I was finishing my studies, I thought, well, it's kind of a interesting coincidence. I'm finishing my studies and I would love to visit Egypt. So that's going the way to show you that I didn't really have a rational kind of a plan or some sort of a linear progression in career, etc. I just thought I'll go and pick up some, see the pyramids, pick up some Arabic, because I eventually read also about Arabic language. I thought it was fascinating. I still think it is fascinating. I went to Egypt and what was 2 months turned out into 4 years and a half. So I ended up staying there. I ended up finding a job, learning the language properly, and eventually leaving the country during the what's called now Arab Spring, or the revolution in that area, in that region. I think what brought me to kind of behavioral sciences was basically on that year, so 2011. And what brought me there was because right after, so a couple of months after the Egyptian revolution, they stopped granting visas for foreigners, any kind of visa, including at one point travel visa. So you couldn't even get into the country if you're a foreigner. That was because Egypt became very hostile towards Western countries, especially, and also people who were like basically foreigners inside, which is what I was. And they didn't grant me an extension to my visa to stay. And by that time, I already have stayed 4 years. So what happened next was again, I guess it's a curious fact. Maybe it's even interesting, but I'll share anyway. So I thought, okay, my thought process was like this. I will go somewhere in Africa where I can do something. I mean, that's really how I thought. So I looked around in Africa, and I like to climb. I climbed Kilimanjaro, climbed Mont Blanc, so some of the top in Europe or so I wanted to climb. At the time I never been to Kilimanjaro. I thought, well, I'll go to somewhere from where I can climb Kilimanjaro, which is the highest peak in Africa. So Kilimanjaro happens to be in Tanzania. And then I looked at Tanzania. Tanzania, they speak Swahili. Swahili consists of 60% Arabic. There is, I think, the composite of 30% of Portuguese, no, French and English, and there is also some local dialects. But 80 to 90% of composite languages I already spoke at that time. So I thought, I don't want to go to Tanzania. Why don't I go somewhere where I don't speak the language, and it's kind of a land of opportunities in that sense. I can do some other stuff there as well. So the only neighboring country of Tanzania where I didn't speak the language was Mozambique. And Mozambique speaks Portuguese. It's a former Portuguese colony. I thought, well, Mozambique is very good because they speak a language I don't speak yet. Number two, it's ranking top 10 on number of things. Firstly, one of the poorest countries in the world, and it still is a one of the poorest 10. It has a lot of natural resources and a very corrupt government because it ended up a civil war, I think 20 years prior to that, which destroyed most of the country's infrastructure and everything. So a very poor country, very corrupt, and yet a lot of stuff that can be done potentially there. So yeah, I went there, found a job, and so I started working for what was at the time the biggest opposition media. And that's where sort of my onboarding myself into kind of initially gamification and eventually behavioral economics started. So I was working for this opposition media company, and it's a grassroots media, which means a lot of journalists are basically supposed to go out on rickshaws or tuk-tuks, as they are called, and report news from the ground. And because a lot of it was basically for social change and stuff. So I felt very comfortable in that media company because I was all for improvement and development of the country. The interesting part was that the website of that media agency, the second most trafficked part of that website was a section about sexual and reproductive health. So I noticed it. So I was a VP of innovation in that company. So I noticed it. I went to talk to the founder, who was at the time, I think still is one of the young global leaders at World Economic Forum, is one of the very few Africans who is. I said, look, Eric Charas is the founder. So I said, look, clearly there is demand for sexual and reproductive health information in this country because 18% of the population has HIV or AIDS. Around 500,000 people die every year in Mozambique alone from malaria. And I think there's just like a need for health information. Can we do something about it? So he said, look, Hayk, I mean, it's great you notice. We know this. It's been like this for a couple of years, but we can't really change the website. And even if we could change the website, it's going to take a lot of time. And he said, why don't you firstly even start, if you want to do something about it, can't you like start by maybe trying to tackle or do something with our distributors, the citizen reporters, so to speak, because they are not really reporting a lot of health related issues. Could you potentially do something about that? And then we can think about it in the meantime. So the situation at the time was that they did have around, I think, 50 or so people that every Friday and Saturday mostly, but also starting Friday, they would go out on tuk-tuks and see if there are any news and distribute the newspaper. So they've been failing for over a couple of years to kind of motivate those people to go out there and kind of during the day, because they are during the day outside, but to report news. And they've promised salary increases and whatnot, and nothing worked. So me at the time, coincidentally, when I went to Mozambique, I started taking what was the first gamification course it was the first MOOC course from Wharton School of Business in Pennsylvania. I forgot who was the trainer, but one of the kind of still known people in gamification. So I was freshly out of the 2 or 3 months course from Wharton on gamification. And I was like, look, Eric, why don't I take a shot at trying to turn your distributors into actual citizen reporters, because it seems that you've been failing. So yeah, that was my kind of first taste of trying to gamify distribution in a country where, well, no one knows anything about it. And I think what the skepticism of the leadership of the company came from was because they thought these people are uneducated, low education or uneducated, poor people, mostly the distributors. So their purchasing power was very small, and they all had what's called a dumb phone. So Eric said, hi, you can give it a shot, but good luck. We don't think it's going to work. So I said, look, I mean, I want to see, I mean, my goal was basically to turn these people into motivated, enthusiastic people who could report news every day, not just on Saturday or Friday evening. So what I did was, guys, I think this could be an interesting example of how to, because nowadays everyone thinks behavioral science or gamification is all about technology and applications and stuff. So what I did was I started off by just going and talking to all of them without even any presentation stuff. I said, look, guys, can you let me know what you guys want or need? Why are you here? What I came out with was basically short-term, long-term, and kind of aspirational things that these people wanted. So, I mean, consider this is Mozambique. They don't even have credits on their dumb phone. What do they want? They want credits. They are poor people. They want a smartphone, a status symbol in that country, and something that's really kind of a big deal for them. And they wanted, of course, because Eric, the founder, was a very famous African generally, so he's very famous in the country. They wanted to spend time with him. So I designed, so I told them every Friday night, just before on Saturday they go out, I'm going to come up with a piece of paper. I didn't say it's called leaderboard to them, but basically I implemented a PBL system, points, badges, and leaderboard. What I did was I wrote all of their names on, well, 2 pieces of paper, and I wrote next to each name how many credits I would give them initially, and how much money, how many SMS they would send that week, and basically what was the points that they accumulated over a period of that 1 week. And every week I would, those who would say I don't have credit, hence I'm not sending you any kind of a SMS about news or updates in my little area in the capital, to those I would give credit, and I would write on that leaderboard, I gave you, let's say, an equivalent of $2, and then end of the week I would say you only send me 2 SMS, which would be $2 would suffice for, let's say, around 50 or 60 SMS, but I got only 2 SMS in exchange for that. So I did this for first 2 weeks I had around, I think initially the first week was like 70-80% of people, of course, gave me what I call an excuse of saying I don't have credit, hence I don't send anything. Second week, that number dropped to 40%. Third week, 0. From third week onwards, everyone started sending me SMS. Of course, not proportionate to the amount of money I would give them, but over the next 2 months, basically, I think 90% of people would send about at least 70% equivalent of what I would give them. And I think the most important thing was I gave less and less. As I said, first couple of weeks, I was giving substantial, we got a budget for that. But basically from second month onwards, I gave 0 credit to anyone. They just kept on sending SMS. So again, the reason I'm sharing this is, guys, because it's a habit formation, basically, in action. They went from not having a habit and giving me excuses of why they are not sending an SMS that was very cheap, to basically all of them sending an SMS without me giving them anything, which was basically at their own expense. An SMS cost for them was a lot more substantial than for me. So, and after the third month, basically they were all doing it. And I would go and they would actually compete. They would come and say, hey, I sent 20 SMS on, you only sent 17. So I would put the leaderboard on there, like they had a room where they would come every Friday and discuss news and stuff. I would put the pieces of paper with their results, if you like, and I would stand back literally at a distance and observe them mull over and discuss and point at leaderboard and say who did well. So to me, it's a really good example of a PBL in action, a leaderboard especially in action. And it became so successful and leadership was so happy that we rolled it out on a national basis. So this company at the time had weekly around 3 million leadership. And this is for a country of, I think at the time, 25 million people. So we rolled it out to basically media and news, whereby again, we incentivized people initially with something material. And that's how you kind of start with the habit formation. Always see what's a short kind of a term material, kind of not tangible, if you like, or material motivation that they have. It's a phone, credits, it doesn't matter. Get them into the habit of doing it and slowly transition them to more social recognition and stuff. And that's what we did exactly, right? So we basically, and then we did the same thing with online audience, right? Initially it was material rewards, but eventually it was a VIP club, some little exclusive groups where you had to qualify every month to stay in that VIP club or group. And I mean, it was really successful. I was very happy because that was actually the first time where I actually got to see that. And I faced this over and over again, but anytime that I would be like, oh, but this only works with educated people, the gamification or behavioral science applied. No, it doesn't. It works. It's a human psyche based, right? If you know how to use it. And it's interesting because 6 months after that or so, I was visiting a friend of mine in Tanzania. She was running an orphan school. So completely casually in a conversation, this was an orphan school somewhere in like south of Tanzania, which is basically, Tanzania is a northern border of Mozambique. So this was in the south, so across the border from Mozambique in Tanzania, in some remote area. She was running a school of, I think, around 100 something kids. So I was there. She hosted me and another couple of friends that she was having over. And she said, so where are you up to? I said, oh, let me tell you about this project of me turning the distribution team in my company into a very motivated team of people. And when I explained to her, she said, look, I mean, maybe this can be applied also for my kids, because my kids, these are basically homeless kids. They don't like to do chores. They don't like to go to classes. It's always a bit difficult. We have to force them. We have to be strict about it and make sure they are coming to classes. I said, okay, well, a couple of ideas. And I said, why don't you kind of gamify that? So I told her a bit, look, chores are something, just sit with kids and understand what they want, right? And understand what they need now, and then what they would need or what they would love to get later on. Of course, with kids, it was basically things like pens, pencils, things to draw on, this kind of stuff. I said, then slowly transition them into something higher up, right? For example, I don't know, again, some sort of a VIP club or a group where only you have to be whatever qualified to be in, and then you guys, only those who are in that club can go out with a guided tour with a tour guide who is going to come because they all wanted to go. So this kind of things. And lo and behold, again, a couple of months after I left, she reported the results, which were again very interesting. And she was very happy. And she basically kind of started doing it on an ongoing basis. These were kids, by the way, between 5 and 12 or 13. So very young kids, remote area in Tanzania, no technology whatsoever. Right. I think she was also using pen and pencil just to write, kind of use the leaderboard and kind of see who is where. Yeah, so that was the first taste. This is 2011, 2012. And I think eventually, again, not to go into all the projects I've done, but eventually I started basically learning not just about gamification, which is a very kind of applied and specific part of behavioral science, but zooming out and kind of learning more about not just tactics and techniques of doing this, and why does even leaderboard work, right? I mean, I've seen so many cases when companies implement a points and badges system, but there is no leaderboard. And the problem with that is that if you have no leaderboard, nothing is going to work. That's the intrinsic drive for us to compete, to do better. In psychology, among other things, this is called image motivation, right? People care about their image, whether that's an orphan kid in Tanzania or it's a Harvard graduate in US. Everyone cares about their image. This is the reality. And if you can tap on that and understand what their needs and wants are, you can directly kind of play on that thing, right? So I know now, but at the time I didn't know about all these things. So I started learning a little bit about that. And then, of course, as along the side, I kind of advised companies like Vodafone, advised companies like Jumia, which is a big part of Rocket Internet in Middle East. And then, yeah, I mean, and then I started a couple of couple of things, right? As Prakash said, I started what was at the time the first co-working space in Middle East. We failed. We failed because, and I've been usually either early or late in the market. We failed because we were the first one in the market, so we spent a lot of time educating the market. I started eventually the first ride-sharing company in Egypt. We were the first one in Egypt, and we were one of the top 10 Arab startups in that year. We were called to we were nominated as one of the top 10 by Web Summit, the famous innovation and technology event. And then I think one thing that I started when I was in Mozambique itself was, as I started saying, right? So there was that health section that was getting a lot of attention. So I went out, I signed a waiver with the company, and I said, look, I'm going to develop a gamified health forum. So basically the idea was that you could post questions. A lot of them were, as we suspected, about reproductive and sexual health, and get answers from your peers or get answers from Ministry of Health with whom we partnered or Red Cross Mozambique. So it turned out that one of the reasons HIV had a very high prevalence in the country was because of the information gap. So we thought to bridge the gap, right? A lot of people knew about stuff, but they had no way of giving the answers or sharing the answers. So we did that. We launched the Gamified Health Forum. It got very quickly picked up by local media because there was nothing like this. And apparently we were right in our hypothesis that it's an information gap problem. So we got a lot of hype. We didn't do any marketing. We got a lot of hype. And my co-founder was a local guy, Mozambican guy. And 6 months after, we got picked up by Portuguese media because, of course, former Portuguese colony, they follow the news. And lo and behold, we got Sapo, which is at the time the biggest Portuguese media conglomerate that came and eventually acquired us. So I spent a year basically vesting and then left. So that's kind of a story of me starting something which was gamified. So you could upvote, downvote, you could provide commands. There would be a simple a PBL system again to eventually give you some rewards for being a good a contributor, part of the community on that platform. And then, guys, eventually I ended up coming to Singapore. And ever since have been living there. And then I think the current venture, I think that's interesting. So I became, because of my two failures, the ride sharing also failed because, it went further. I mean, it was the first one, but we got put out by what's called the BlaBlaCar, the biggest European ride sharer, who invested in a competitor and put us out of business. So I came to Singapore with two failures and one exit under my belt. And the first big transport hackathon that I was invited to mentor a couple of companies, 4 companies actually. One won the grand prize. So one of the 4 won the grand prize, and the second one won the People's Choice Awards, and SOSV was there, and they invited me to be part of their bigger pool of mentors and advisors. And because of that, I ended up being exposed to a lot of financial institutions in Asia. So SOSV has a corporate track, which means we also advise banks, insurance companies, not just portfolio startups. And I think one thing that emerged, and I don't know if any of you are bankers or know about finance, probably some of you know or are in this, but credit scoring turned out to be an elephant in the room in financial industry. Okay, now Prakash, you are from India, and some of you guys are in India. It's the same thing there, right? I mean, India is probably the vanguard of financial technology, but as far as the rest of Asian countries are concerned, credit scoring is still using models or the approach from 1970s, which is when credit scoring was mainstreamed. And when I learned this, to me, naturally, the thought came. I thought, well, 1970s, there's no internet, no Facebook, no Uber or Grab, no nothing, right? The only information about yourself, which is somewhere digitized, is a bank information. So at the time, it made sense to assess you or to judge your financial capability based on a bank account, especially in the West. Fast forward 50 years is the same situation. By and large, most banks use some sort of a financial repayment-based history credit score because all big ones are like that. So then I started getting kind of input from my portfolio companies and some of the advisory companies, some big banks, that is there any kind of more comprehensive credit scoring system? One that doesn't just include financial repayment, but other stuff. And that's the thought. I did some research. I mean, as you remember just now, as I was saying, my exit was health tech. So I became kind of a bit of a health generalist. I'm not a specialist. I don't know much about health, but I knew certain things. And then kind of, again, serendipity or faith or karma, I ended up meeting a guy who was is a banking veteran. And then a CTO, which was kind of who was also looking at what to do in Asia and looking at financial sector, and kind of a couple of us came together and started, as Pragya said at the beginning of the presentation, a comprehensive, what we call financial health profile. We don't want to call it credit because it's a misnomer in a lot of the cases. So financial health profiling and scoring is what we offer. We launched last year and currently in Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia, basically, and hoping to grow to another 2 or 3 countries in the region the coming year. Okay, I spoke a lot, more than I expected myself. But anyway, I think probably makes sense for you guys to ask questions or share thoughts. I would be grateful for that. Any thoughts or anyone's journey or how that's similar, kind of any input would be interesting now.
Thank you so much, Hayk. That was lovely. 2-3 times I thought I will butt in, then I said, let me just shut up and listen to this fantastic story. Now, I knew about 8 languages. I knew about the PhD in nuclear physics. I knew about the entrepreneurship, the behavioral science journey. I had no idea about chess. I had no idea about mountaineering. I had no idea learning language was just for a challenge. All right, so we are bowing down, saying this is fantastic, we'll learn. And I have a question actually tied to it. The reason I mentioned is I have a question tied to it. For people who are here in the club, I see many of us are new out here. What we typically do, guys who have joined us for the first time out here, we keep ourselves on mute, we keep our videos on, and then we go into a gallery mode typically so that we can see each other's face on a grid. The reason we do that is, as much as we love and we really enjoy listening to our guests and learning from them, one of our goals as a part of the Behavioral Science Club is also to become friends with each other. That's how I know Harmony, I know Kathleen, I know Urmi, Maria, and I know Lachaja, right? So we end up building relations like that. Building relation needs us to have memories. We need to know each other's faces. I need to know Harmony has a dog. People need to know Prakash doesn't know when to shut up, right? So this we kind of use to build that relation. Feel free to put your videos on. And the second thing that we do is we kind of chat with each other in private all the time, because that's how you make sure you're not disturbing people, but yet you are building and exchanging information, exchange your LinkedIn profiles, make new friends, and start finding what's common interest, right? The third thing is we keep questions ready. So right now, anything is fair game. You can talk about behavioral finance, innovation, technology, behavioral science in general, gamification itself, right? So please have your questions ready. I have one question to start with. So your own journey, right? You have a PhD in physics, and then you can speak multiple languages. You have climbed straight up the highest mountain in the African continent, Kilimanjaro. And these things, right? You can't pretend. You can't go and learn the first law of physics. Inertia, stop, a body at inertia, rest is at rest, a body in motion is in motion until and unless a force comes and acts on it, right? You can't learn the first law of physics and then go and tell people, I know physics. Because the limitation of your knowledge is very much apparent to you, right? The same goes with higher mathematics, right? You can't just learn trigonometry and say, I know everything in maths.
Yeah.
The thing about languages, you can't learn 3 words. And in fact, we are having a sort of challenge right now in the Behavioral Science Club. We want to end the year picking up some new habits or new goals. One of the challenges for people to also pick up language, right? So I am also part of the challenge with us. Thing about language learning also is you can't learn 5 words and then tell yourself, I know this language. You know 4, 5 words and you are aware of it. However, and now this is important for us because in our club, we have people like Lachajar who are PhDs, but also people who have just about joined today and all they know is the word nudge, right? So it's an entire spread of us. So for people like us who are just about joining in, for those of us who are just about joining in and just about getting curious, the challenge with the field like behavioral science is the bar to entry feels very low.
Yeah, that's right.
It feels very intuitive.
Yeah.
So we are very much at the risk of forgetting that what we know is a tiny amount. It is just, it could be an illusion of knowledge. It just feels very right. It feels like I know the path actually is quite long, there's a lot more to learn. Now,
Yeah.
as someone who has traversed that path, right, and who understand that world very well, what is the advice that you can give us um, to make sure that we are forever aware of the limitations in our knowledge and have that humility to say, you know what, I don't think I know this. I need to learn. How do you do this, especially in a field like behavioral science?
Yeah. That's a very good and I think kind of a big question. So remember, I think you and I, when we first spoke, we were discussing this event, right? We were participating in, and I think there is what I would call now, Prakash, behavioral science of behavioral science, right? There are a lot of people. So guys, I think in my view, right? It's just my view. There is knowledge and there is knowledge, right? So the analogy I always give is like you can consume all the knowledge you want, just like you consume food, right? But a lot of the cases, the knowledge you consume is a bit like your food. They came, you ate it, you ingested it, but then for some reason your stomach is sick or whatever, it comes out of your system. So you can tell yourself on illusion yourself saying, yes, I learned this, but it's not going to stick. There is also, by the way, the one point I wanted to mention is there is Donner-Kruning effect, right? A lot of people are so unaware of how much they know and they don't. There is a threshold below which they don't even know how much they don't know. The Donner-Kruning effect is a recent couple of years. But people who show, so there are studies that show people who think they know it all, are usually people who are very kind of showcasing the Donner-Kruning effect, which means that people who think they know are the ones who actually don't. The higher you go in terms of actual people who know, the more when you talk to them, they say that they don't know, right? So it's almost like it's a strong correlation of people who say they don't know. And of course, like people who are pretty high up, they learned, and once they show that they don't know or say, yeah, I'm not really sure, and they have a more hesitant language about a lot of their knowledge, are the ones who actually, the ones are counterintuitively the ones who say, oh, I know, I already learned this. There's good chance that they don't know so much or they know very little. Yeah, that's right, imposter. So there is self-attributing bias and stuff, right? I don't, not to go into the cognitive bias name dropping, but there are a lot of things that people are, and someone asked me, I don't know who was recently said, what's the connection between confirmation and self-attribution, self-serving bias? The moment you get any kind of confirmation to your knowledge that, of course, seemingly you know stuff, immediately you say, I know stuff, and that's kind of when you take your foot off the gas and kind of stop learning. And so this shouldn't happen. Firstly, be aware that the moment you tell yourself you know, there's a good chance you actually don't. You are still a lot ahead. Just take that as a signal that you don't. Secondly, as I said, knowledge in itself has to be consumed and digested, not just ingested. So I guess that the thing is ingestion versus digestion, because a lot of people learn stuff. There is also studies from educational sector that show, and I forgot the curve. This is a 120-year-old curve that shows that 80% of your knowledge that you learned, it doesn't matter what it is out, I think the first week is out of your head. And 90% of the overall is out in the first 30 days. Just remember that. Whatever you learn, doesn't matter how much you wanted to learn, needed to learn. If you don't do anything about that knowledge, it's gone. So first 30 days and you barely have 10% of what you learned. And no matter how much money you spend and how much effort you spend, and the best part, no matter how smart you are. So making the knowledge, to digest the knowledge means you eat it, and just like any normal food flow or cycle, right? You eat it and it gets digested, becomes part of your body. You cannot pinpoint saying, oh, I had rice bowl yesterday and it's here. It becomes part of who you are, right? So think of the same way about knowledge, right? You read stuff, you learn stuff, and it becomes so much part of you that you practice it. You don't even, I mean, you say, yeah, that's how I think, right? You don't say, oh, this is, of course you can cite and whatever, but it becomes part of who you are, right? And so think of knowledge and kind of think of you knowing about stuff when it comes to this level, right? When it becomes almost subconscious that you are practicing. I think a good example of that is, and I think one thing I would probably do in this period of time is I'll name drop a couple of books that I really think everyone should read if you haven't. One of these books I really, really recommend is a book called Never Split the Difference. I don't know, Prakash, if you read it. Yeah, so he read it. Guys, whoever didn't read it, please read that book. That book is by the international hostage negotiator of FBI. There's only one guy. His name is Chris Voss, and it's a book about how he applied behavioral sciences, mostly cognitive psychology, to negotiations when there is life and death involved, right? FBI negotiations, stuff of stories of the Hollywood movies. One of my favorite biases, and I think yesterday in our panel, someone asked me, they said, what's your favorite bias? I mean, or most excited bias, the one that I'm excited about. Outside of confirmation, which allegedly is the biggest impact bias of all. I mean, we can discuss this afterwards, but I really love and I encourage everyone to learn more, and even more importantly, apply anchoring, guys. I don't know how many of you know what's anchoring, but the idea is just like the word implies, you anchor someone into something. Everything, for example, there were studies back in, I forgot, 2010, 11 or 12, I think, that showed that, for example, Facebook. So Facebook did studies showing that when they show you negative news on your feed, you become more negative. When I say, Prakash, how much is this book? And he says $20. And then I say, Prakash, how much do we pay for milk? Whatever that he said previously, or I said, that number, doesn't matter if it's irrelevant, is going to affect what he says next. And it's not just numbers, it's concepts. For example, there was this known case when a real estate agent was very successful. What he would do, he had mediocre type of apartments that he was kind of subletting, and every couple or every family that came to him and asking to see him apartments, he had this one really bad apartment. He would take them all there first. It doesn't matter if they ask for 2-room or 3-room. He would just take them and then claim a mistake or claim that something was waiting in the other apartment. But he would always show them the worst apartment, like really dirty and no view and nothing. And then once they were like really angry and about to leave, he would say, no, let's go to the right apartment. You know what they would do? They would, like, I think he claimed that there was a like 70-80% chance that they would take that apartment, which would otherwise be a mediocre apartment if you showed them at first. So he would basically use anchoring in this way. You anchor someone in a content, in a concept, in a number, and then basically what comes next is based on what you're trying to do, right? And then this book that I said, Never Split the Difference, he talks about extreme anchoring, which is the extreme form of doing this, which is very, very useful in sales, in negotiations, in any kind of communication when you're trying to convey a message. So again, I kind of digressed a bit and talked about what I think is the biggest kind of like some of the most impactful biases. But in terms of learning, I think just coming back to it, I think once you learn, just be aware, number one, that the moment you tell yourself you know something, that's an indication you don't. Just keep on going. Number two, you have to apply and really make that knowledge your own. It doesn't matter if it's in behavioral science or something else you're trying to learn. Of course, I think the good thing about behavioral science or psychology or whatnot is that it's a long-term investment in yourself. So keep on telling that to yourself, because it doesn't matter what your specialty, profession, or job or life is. You understanding behavioral sciences is you understanding how humans think, how humans act, right? And that's what you need, because you're a human. It doesn't matter what you do, you're going to be doing it with humans, around humans. And I keep on saying this to our interns, to our team, and that keeps a lot of people going. The reminder that this is long term, so really try to learn it. Try to apply as much as you can. Unlike other like theoretical physics and stuff, you can't always apply it. But behavioral science, I always tell, like I was advising Yellow Pages. I used to work for Yellow Pages in Singapore. I was doing cell psychology training, and I would tell them to go practice with their spouses and their families what I was teaching them. Because a lot of this is immediately applicable. You can have your wife or your husband or your kids and practice with them. So practice always if you want to keep. And another thing, I think, especially for languages, Prakash, because you're saying about languages, I picked languages in a very contextual manner. I never set out, and I don't think I would ever have a patience to pick up a language, which I'm sure a lot of you think, right? You probably all say, but like I can't sit and learn a language. I just happened to kind of travel in different countries, and every country I went, I tried to learn the language. But what kept for me learning or investing myself in a language is the liking part. So that's gonna maybe sound strange, but I wouldn't advise anyone learn a new language if you don't like it. And that's kind of paradoxical, because you can probably ask me, how can you like a language before you learn it, right? But that's the thing. Like I liked, for example, Portuguese before I could even learn anything about it. And that eventually kept me going and learning Portuguese even after I left Mozambique. Is the same thing for Arabic. I learned about how Arab poetry is great and Quran's language is great. And it's like Arab language is a very interesting language. I liked it. Then I ended up learning it. And I would have never learned if I didn't like it in the first place. And there are languages like, for example, Spanish. I don't like it. But now I don't have to like it because of my Portuguese knowledge, I can actually understand a lot of it. So always keep in mind, if it's a language, at least in my view, make sure you like it. It should be functional. It shouldn't be because you have a job, a girlfriend, or a spouse, or for whatever reason you want to learn. It has to come from liking. If you really like a language, you would eventually learn it. That's at least my experience of picking up some languages in some countries where I lived. And yeah, just I think one thing I'll say, and I'll let others talk, is just remember always to apply whatever knowledge you hear, you learn. And I think the best thing about behavioral sciences is that it's really, really applicable. Like you don't have to wait 3 months to be in a country and like a language to actually practice it. This one, after this class, you can, after this conversation session, whatever you want to call it, you can go and practice everything from extreme anchoring to endowment effect to anything you like. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on this, Prakash. Sorry, again, I took a lot of time.
Thank you so much. Number one, make sure that you keep an eye on yourself. The moment your brain says, "Oh, I think I know this," that's when you realize, okay, now I'm getting too confident. I need to learn a lot more. Second, you talked about, I think it's called the Ebbinghaus, and someone mentioned out there the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. So use some sort of
that's right.
Space repetition system. I use
space repetition. Yeah, very good. Sorry, I just say exactly right. As Prakash says, space repetition. Don't know how I can pronounce it. Space repetition is the way to go to retain the knowledge, guys. So you learn something, even if you can't apply, just Google space repetition for learning, and you'll get the way to retain the knowledge. But yeah, Prakash, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. Carla, you had a question. Carla, you want to unmute and ask the question yourself?
Sorry, I can't tell I can ask my question because I have a math. But I don't know if you can help me.
All right, I'll ask the question on your behalf, Carla, if you want me to.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
All right. Okay, just let me to check my question. Sorry. Okay.
No
so thank you so much, Hayk. You are a very interesting person. So, well, I have just 2 questions. How can we improve to teach the people for using wisely credit cards supporting with behavioral finance? And my second is, do you think the adoption of this new knowledge, I mean, this kind of behavioral finance knowledge to educate people and so on, takes more time or is longer to be adopted? months, years, I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, thanks for that, Carla. I'll probably have to ask you or Prakash to repeat the first question I missed. I think there was something with credit cards. What was the first question?
The first question was, how do you get people to understand how to use credit cards wisely? Is there a behavioral finance or behavioral science angle to it? And I really wish I knew the answer when I was like 19 and I got my first credit card in college for free by Citibank. It messed me up. Where were you hiking then, man? You were hiking in the mountains, I know. But
Yeah. Guys, I think one thing, number one, awareness of specific reasons why we spend credit cards the way we use credit cards we use. I think awareness about it is number one. That's going to already keep you from using it. The famous concept now that's called buy now, pay later. You guys heard about it? Okay, great. So buy now, pay later is based on a very specific thing. It's called present bias. Present bias means whatever you have in front of you, whether that's money or anything else, you give that a lot bigger weight now than in future. So if I give you $100 now and I give you $100 tomorrow, all kinds of studies show that you value the same exact $100 now more than the ones in future. And the longer, the further in future, the less you value. Now, credit card, the whole concept of it is based on that, because you don't mind paying something now because you don't feel it. You just pay it. But when it comes repayment, it's end of the month or a couple of months after. So then that's where you have to face the decision. So the effective way of trying, in a way, at least in my view, to kind of address that present bias part is to make sure you understand the consequences of you paying now. What's the consequence to you now? If you show, for example, in some sort of progression that if you pay now, it's going to accumulate and come to this, or so far you spent so much, you put kind of a perspective of how much it will cost you to pay a credit card a couple of months after, for example, but you showcase it to me now, there's a better chance people will be more careful about it, because we are prone to present bias, all of us. What can take us out of it is that awareness and then specific mechanism to kind of put it in front of our eyes that, look, I buy now, I spend now, pay later. This cognitive difference is going to be, is not what we think, right? So we have to be aware of that. I think that's one thing. I don't know, Prakash, if you or someone else has other things to add to that part.
Guys, I would like to add something. First of all, my name is Lachazar. I'm doing a PhD in marketing in Germany. For the folks that don't know me, you will never believe this, and I don't believe this, that the person that I'm going to quote on this topic, but I recently heard some advice that's coming from Jay-Z when it comes to buying stuff, and he apparently once said that if you can't pay the price 2 times, if you can buy it 2 times, you can't afford it. So maybe it's a
very
aggressive but interesting heuristic to deal with those sorts of consumer expenses.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If you can buy 2 times, you cannot afford it.
And, so I have a cute story about that. I have 2 boys, and so as they're older now, they're in university, but they would have fits like little kids have, going to the aisles at the end, and they will want something, or they will stop in the toy section and they gotta have that. So for me to change their behaviors, I said, if you will wait until next week, I'm going to get you the bigger car, not the small one, the bigger car, and let them think about that. So what do you want, the little one or the big one? So now my boys know that if they wait, they get something bigger. And I do have a 20-year-old that knows to and has a credit card and manages it very well. So you just got to start early with educating. But my question to you is on the leaderboard. I agree that it brings results, but in the US, and I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a serial entrepreneur that thought got cured working for the state. I'm a state employee, not for the money, because I believe in what I'm doing. But outside of my job, I'm like, oh, I got to keep my brain busy. So I started a new company that I'm launching, well, probably next year, big. And so the leaderboard, would work phenomenally for me because I have a cream that will be used in tattoo and piercing parlors, so that people that are rebels and get a tattoo or a piercing can heal faster. I'm a nurse, so I'm like, went and had my piercing done, and I'm like, I'm not going to wait 6 months to heal. Are you crazy? And the gal that did it said, no, that's what we got to do. And I'm like, you must be out of your mind. No, that's not happening. So I love chemistry, came up with this cream, did the marketing. I love the leaderboard, and I would love to know, how can I incorporate that so that I can basically put one shop against the other in this leaderboard competition so that they buy more of my product. But in the US, competition is not viewed healthy in many ways.
That's right.
It's
I
not.
think I agree. I know about it as well. No, so you can use, my thinking, again, happy to connect with you offline and we can exchange some notes or ideas on this. But on that note, I would say, firstly, you don't have to kind of position it as a competition. So a lot of it is going to be packaging. We are talking about behavioral science. A lot of it is as much of an effect is what you're trying to do as much as how you deliver it, right? I would still say, in brief, you should probably have a leaderboard, but the way you position or deliver the message probably should be slightly different. And again, happy to connect and probably tell you at least my opinion of how to do. But idea is like this. Firstly, they have to even know that there is a leaderboard. I think that's one of the most important parts of leaderboard. They have to know they are going to be in there, and they have to know that others who are competing with them are going to be there. That's what's going to get their intrinsic kind of competitive juices going.
Right.
Yeah, happy to connect. And again, we can exchange.
I'll connect and we can just continue this.
Sure,
but
we can discuss. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to answer the first question on behavioral finance that was there as well. If I may answer that in brief, I think behavioral finance teaching it's not that it's difficult or long, it's just that you have to start early and you have to start with the basics. And there are a number of books that you can look at it. But the idea is that, again, I think maybe the most fundamental idea about behavioral finance is that we are just, again, investors or shareholders. We are generally not very rational. And it boils down to understanding specific behaviors of whoever you're trying to teach something, what they exhibit, what they are prone to, or what makes them tick, and kind of addressing that. And I know it's kind of a general theoretical answer, but that there are books. I have a couple of books in my shelf I can show you that you can also read. By the way, a book that I bought in India, one second, I can show you on behavioral finance. So I bought this book in India. This is a really nice book called Behavioral Investor by Daniel Crosby. Really nice. Art and Science of Investment Management. Again, guys, if you don't know about this, have a read. I bought this in Bombay airport. Very nice book. It goes into basically, and I have notes, as you can see, I underline stuff a lot. So read this, learn it. There's a lot of very useful information. But again, to really briefly, basically just start early, understand your audience. I guess one thing I wanted to say is that a lot of the behavioral science related projects have to start with really understanding the other side, the target group, the businesses you're trying to address, what their needs and wants, and what makes them tick. Because a lot of people think, in terms of, especially Maria, you're saying about leaderboards, a lot of people think it's like a band-aid you can stick on top of your platform. That's not how it works. That's why companies like Microsoft failed, because they tried for a long time to use a leaderboard after the Samsung's very popular project on that same thing, right? So they tried and they failed.
So I can tell you, I grew up in a communist country, Romania, back in the times, and we had leaderboards because that's what the communist leaders believed in. But we had two. It was, these are the good people and these are the bad people. So the joke was that you would make it on a board, but you would have to make sure you got on the right one.
Yeah, that's right. And I think in places like China, there is social score. You guys probably all know. So Chinese government is the largest social scoring or leaderboard experiment in the world currently. So that literally everyone gets a score, everyone is encouraged to use it, and it makes so much difference. I mean, in public hospitals, you should queue up at least 2 to 3 hours to get to your turn. If you have a social score that's above 700 something, I think the top is like 900 something, you skip the queue completely. I mean, it trickles down to the smallest things you are going to do in your day to day. And that's why everyone is aware, and it's a bit like your big brother kind of an experiment. And I mean, that's why China is as effective in a number of ways as it is because literally the country is gamified. I mean, literally the country is gamified. And I know I talked to a couple of Indian friends of mine, they're like, this, what happens in China can never work in India. And I secretly say, you know what, if the government does it, trust me, it will work. It's a human psyche based, if they do it right, and in a way that will kind of tick with Indians, it will work. So I'm a strong believer, of course, I mean, that it works, but yeah, of course, we have to consider specific conditions and the context, Maria. So yeah, I mean, you can always try and see how that's going to work, but it's very effective. Passing back to our moderator, Prakash.
Hi, thank you so much. We are at the end of session officially, but it's all up to you. If you want to, if you have a couple of minutes more.
Yeah, I'm okay. It's Saturday. If you guys have any questions, feel free.
All right, that works, right? Folks, in India, it's 10:30 in the night. If you haven't had your dinner yet, quickly grab your bites. Yeah. If you had your dinner already, be here for some time or get a coffee. I think we've just gotten lucky. There was one question from Nutan, if I'm not mistaken. Nutan, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thank you, Prakash. I hope you can hear me and see me. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So the thing is, I am from a behavioral science background. I used to be in brand consulting. And a decade ago, I shifted into well-being. And now I assist people with stress and with sleep. I use a lot of behavioral components. The huge challenge that I have is to keep them motivated to do it. Because technically to de-stress, you have to lose those dopamine. To relax, to fall asleep, you need to lose that dopamine. You do not want to go into that motivated, excited state. But without that motivation, it's difficult to keep them back on track because they will get on the bandwagon, they get better, and then they fall off. So how do I use maybe the leaderboard or something like that, a gamification method, which could help you relax?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. And yeah, congratulations on basically transition and kind of really helping people from that level. I'm a big believer in that as well, in for example, using meditation and yoga for this. I think my 2 cents will be, let me cite one thing. You guys know what LinkedIn did a couple of years ago with their profiling system? Do you guys remember? LinkedIn did a very simple thing. In some ways, Anutan, this is similar to a challenge you have. So LinkedIn had a big problem because most of the information was incomplete on your LinkedIn profile. And so they've been trying and offering even monetary kind of incentives, etc., for people to try and kind of fill in the profile. Firstly, complete it as much as possible. Secondly, provide accurate answers. That didn't work. So LinkedIn did a very simple thing. They introduced what's called profile completeness, this little circle that says your profile is 50, 60, 70, 80% complete. That made, I think in 6 months, they reported that I think about 70 or 80% of their monthly active users completed the profile completeness thing. This is a simple progression bar, Nutan, something that you can implement. I don't know if you have a mobile app or a website or something, but a progression bar which says clearly where we are. Okay. And what we need to do to get to the next level is what you need, in my view. That's going to give people a confidence and motivation, because a lot of the cases, stress comes from uncertainty and not knowing what's next or what to do to improve further, right? Especially in your area. By showing them where they are, you give them the confidence that their efforts, number one, did not go to nothing, right? And secondly, when you show them what's next and what they can get when they do 2 or 3 things, it gives them the kind of peace of mind that, okay, I don't have to be stressed about this. I know what I do next. Again, I'm not saying this is, exactly. It's gradient goal related as well. Yeah, gradient goal effect, etc. So if you're saying gradient goal, let's say operational transparency. Firstly, you show them where it is. and show them 2 things to do to go to the next level. That to me will go a long way of helping your audience, because a lot of the cases people make an effort and they are in the dark. They have no idea, right? What's my progression? Am I getting better? And if you have a way of quantifying and showing where they are, and that's what LinkedIn did. They just said you are 85% complete, put your skills and put your title in, and you'll get from 85 to 90. And a lot of people did. The best part was there was no incentives, nothing. It just plays on a couple of things, right? It's the operational transparency, gradient goal effect. Gradient goal effect, I forgot who mentioned it, but the idea of this is like this. You probably know it, but I'll say for everyone. The idea is that if you show where we are, the closer you come to your goal, the more motivated people become to getting to that goal. It's an acceleration.
Okay.
So if you say here, you know, a famous thing, right? When people get a stamp when they buy a book, it's 10 stamps, and every 10 stamps you get 1 book for free. First 2 stamps is nothing, but as you stamp and every time you buy a book, you get 1 more stamp. People are like, oh, I just have 2 left. Oh, I get this one. Oh, I don't need this, but I'm just going to buy just so I can get that stamp. That effect is very, very powerful. So a lot of people, yeah, that's right. For fitness and exercises, this is the big deal. You know how very good fitness instructors say, oh, just the last 1 or last 2 ones, because they know that the closer you feel yourself to the goal, the faster you're going to achieve, the more motivated you will be. So if you can implement something that's going to give you, firstly, that kind of transparency of them knowing where they are and what to do next and how close they are coming each time, I think that can probably or potentially help.
It works excellent for fitness motivation. That there I can see it happen. But when you want the opposite to happen, there you want them to fall asleep. So I'm going to definitely try this out, because I definitely use something similar for, when I teach and motivation and things like that. But I've been struggling with stress and sleep. I'll try implementing. I've got an idea now, and we'll be in touch.
I think maybe my last advice to you, Nathan, is also it's a lot about tackling the intrinsic motivation, not the extrinsic one. If you understand what their intrinsic motivation is, why they are doing what they are doing with you, you help them tackle that in whichever way, quantify. And again, even if you don't do specifically this gradient goal approach, etc., you understand what that is and try to help them achieve it, as in show that they are going close to it. I think that's what we really want. It doesn't matter if it's de-stressing themselves in general, or it's about specific workouts, or just health related, right? It's tackling the intrinsic motivations of people who are with you. So it doesn't apply to everyone. You just figure out what is that really makes them tick. And to understand this, ask a lot of open questions. What's your interest? What do you want to do in a couple of years? Or why are you even doing this? How do you think about this concept? I mean, this kind of questions, discovery questions. And then if you build something towards that, towards them achieving that, that's really what's going to help them, in my view.
So my first degree, Hayk, was in dietitian, and I have 3 majors with my first bachelor: food, nutrition, health. Yeah, I was like, what the heck? Yeah, 3 of those. So for Nathan, sleep is an abstract idea. We don't know what sleep is. You have to bring it back to something we understand and we use daily. So for her, it would be exercise. We get it. We know what it is, and we know food. So you have to, within your stuff, to bring it down. You're not going to exercise an hour before you're sleeping, because that raises your dopamine levels.
Correct.
That's a very direct, concrete advice that works phenomenal. You're not going to have a full stomach, because again, your digestive system will be busy and you cannot go to sleep because it's doing something. So once you move the abstract into something concrete,
exactly,
by focusing on exercise, like fitness and nutrition, then your abstract concept will be bought in by your audience.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So Maria basically answered the question, and I think a lot of people don't appreciate sleep. They think it's kind of secondary. As Maria says, if you show what sleep does to your brain, how it's the cleansing, what the cleansing that happens in your brain. For example, things like Alzheimer's and stuff, a lot of this comes because people don't get enough sleep, and all that zombie or whatever cells and all the kind of cells that are not taken out of your brain, all that kind of as a result of your brain function, right? All they stay, and eventually that results in a lot of different sicknesses, everything from Parkinson's, right? People who don't exercise, right? Parkinson's is a lot because of dopamine systems that are not working in the brain, right? For example, exercising has a correlation of eventually preventing you from getting both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. But a lot of people don't know it, right? They think exercise is optional or sleep is optional. As Maria says, if you make it concrete, and a bit like tobacco industry, right? Show the result, even sometimes a grotesque result of what can happen if you don't sleep. People wake up to it, you know? People realize that this is important to do. So thanks for that. That was really, really good answer. I really liked it.
Thank you, guys. We'll take two questions more, one from Yogesh and then one from Latija. And then we have a nice announcement about a surprise at the end of it. Yogesh, your question, please. Yogesh, we can't hear you. You are.
Is it audible now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So Hayk, my question is that with respect to leaderboard, especially if you're implementing it in a team, and I know someone, his leadership style is that if there is something which needs to be improved, a mattress or something, he will divide it amongst all the team members of 20-25 people. With that approach, he will start focusing on the person who is delivering the least. It helps to improve the overall results because you're always focusing on the last 20th 25th person, and your average performance increases for your team and the company. But what impact does it have on the collaboration of the team members? One. Second, does it really motivate the last person in the ranking, or what impact it creates on the self-esteem of that person?
Yeah, you're asking another $1 million question. Number one, and I forgot who said this, who quoted this, but the idea is that when you're criticizing or where you're giving a constructive or negative, constructive, let's call it feedback to someone who is the least performer or least well performer, your critique or your advice or your comment has to be specific about the behavior or the process, not the person itself. That also directly tackles the self-esteem part, because you're not saying you're a bad person or you're a stupid person. You're saying this part didn't really go so well because this happened. Of course, it's the person who did whatever that's being criticized, but your focus on process or the task at hand is the critical part, both for checking the box of self-esteem and also for helping the person take that as a feedback to whatever the behavior is and improving it. So I would say just that in terms of that. And then overall performance, I think, and the person who quoted criticized specifically, and the second part of it is praise generically. If you praise the entire team for performance of whatever the result it is, and again, when you're going on the individual level, specifically, again, praise the process or the task, not the person. Because in that sense, again, you're not touching the egos or self-esteems. And of course, I think the important part is if it's a group exercise or group kind of a project, etc., to show that, to initially, firstly, indicate that group collaboration is going to make a difference, or it's going to be rewarded or measured. And at the end, of course, to emphasize the result or the observation about whether group collaboration even happened or they, as individuals, kind of reached the final result. So, I mean, the brief is both cases, when you're praising and when you're criticizing, just focus on the task, on the process, and always try to show, it's a bit like what we just said, right? When you're even criticizing, please put 1 or 2 points of what to do to improve. Because I know a lot of cases, and I'm sure you do as well, where just sheer criticism and you are this and you are that, it's firstly very personal. And secondly, it's a lot about the just negative. You didn't do this, didn't do that. I found it much more effective when you, of course, focus on what didn't work, but say, what if you tried this? Or what if it were to be this way? This is what would happen. I don't have any better answer. I'm sorry. I don't know if Prakash or others here on this call would probably be more specialized to give you a more specific answer.
No, that helps actually. What you mentioned, that helps. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much, Yogesh. I think this is the first time, Yogesh, you've joined us. Is that right?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
I hope not the last time, though. Yeah. Latija, yes, please.
Yeah, definitely not.
Any
Latija,
other questions?
unmute yourself and go ahead with your question, if you can hear us.
Me? Sure. First of all, I'm really thrilled and excited that we're talking about sleep, because I'm a sleep enthusiast and a training one too. just to tell you guys, my yoga on this topic is, his name is Matthew Walker. Check his stuff, amazing. Can you immediately be motivated to improve your sleep too? It's everything that you said today is very fascinating, Hayk, and I like your approach. Actually, what what I would like to hear is what you're currently doing. Maybe you can tell us about your current venture, the one that's dealing with financial profiling. That's something that would excite me. And I know I will leave it up to you if you decide to participate, but maybe we can make it even more interesting. Maybe you can do it in a way as though we are potential investors in your company. But that's up to you.
Sure.
Just to spice it up a little bit.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Cesar. Very, very good point. Yeah, guys, sorry, the project we have is basically, as I said, it's a financial health profiling and scoring. I think the part where we're applying behavioral science is a couple of parts. One is because the banks we work with or we service, we take over the application form for different financial products, let's say loans or insurance company, and we reformulate. So on average, 50 or 60 questions are asked for any loan, any consumer unsecured loan application. We take over, we ask up to 15, and we put questions related to health. I think one thing I forgot to mention in this project that our approach is not just financial, but it has finance, social, lifestyle, and health information. And as such, that's why it's probably the most comprehensive, because as you know, Cesar, and I think everyone knows here, that finance and health people really don't know much about each other. It's a very unknown on both sides. And what we're trying to do is also consider lifestyle and health points when it comes to scoring or profiling. And that makes COVID kind of made it very obvious that health plays a big role in someone's well-being, and even more relevant to financial well-being, right? Because statistics
I think we lost Hayk's feed there for a moment, but while he joins back, guys, thank you so much for staying late. This is
such as, for example,
Hayk, you have to repeat your answer because most of us couldn't hear it. Your video
sorry. My connection, sorry. No, I was saying that the profiling system we offer has social, financial, lifestyle, and health information. And we are applying behavioral science on a couple of points. One, at the application stage, where we are basically taking over the questions and asking questions in application form, which are behaviorally informed. So that increases both the accuracy as well as the hit rate of even having the response. And secondly, again, at the stage where, because part of what we do is we pull information from mobile phones of users based on consent. At that stage, we also kind of have a little bit of gamification and ask, for example, for people to share their utility bill or a telephone bill or something like that in exchange for potential, again, discounts, etc., which is kind of very normal for people who are applying for loans or credit cards. So that's the project. Think of it as a scoring system, except it's just a lot more comprehensive, and it's gamified on a mobile application level and also on the level when people are filling up their application for an insurance or a credit card or a loan, etc. That's in brief the project. Happy to kind of connect again offline and tell more if this is of interest.
Thank you so much, Hayk. Thank you all. We kind of extended our usual hours. I think it's because Louise is not here. We typically are very much kept in check by her. She's always like, oh my God, it's time, let's get it out. And we're all like, no, we can go for some minutes more, man. Yeah, but Louise, yeah, I know, I can see how many out there. So thank you so much, everyone. Hayk, that was wonderful. I think a lot of us will reach out to you. You can find him on LinkedIn. Feel free to drop him a message if he's free. I'm sure he will respond. If he's not free, he'll respond after some time. I mean, eventually he will respond. He seems like the guy who will help out.
Yeah, I'll put my LinkedIn, guys. Feel free to connect. I'll have happy to connect with everyone and talk further. I'll just put it in the chat here, and I'll put my email in case anyone wants to connect over email. And then, yeah, guys, feel free. It's my pleasure. Always love to exchange notes and talk and discuss. Here's my LinkedIn, and I'll just type out my email. Feel free to connect.
Thank you so much for that, Hayk. And guys, before we go, the year is coming to an end, and you all are aware of what we have been doing at the club on the side, which is instead of starting a habit at the beginning of the year, we're trying to end this year with a goal, a habit. It could be something as simple as saying, I haven't really called that particular friend of mine from childhood, so I'm going to call him or her and 4 more people whom I've lost touch with. It could be something as simple as that. It could be something as simple as saying, I'm going to pick up 50 words of this language, not more. We'll put up the upper bound. No one is getting unnecessarily ambitious here, right? You don't want the stress. 50 words are more than enough. Or you simply want to maybe learn to play 1 beat on the cajon or on the, on the drum. Small goals are good enough. We still have almost 12 days for the year to be over. 12 days are again enough to pick up something. Even right now, for those of us who have not joined, it is good enough to pick up 1 book and say, I'm going to read 15 pages a day. You finish 150 page, you're done. Don't go more than 10 pages a day, right? I mean, it's all doable. Let's do that. Because if we do that, when the year comes, we all are going to have a resolution. I mean, it just is there. You can escape it. But we have a lot more belief. We have some techniques. We have an entire behavioral science club with us for us to get better with our habits, with our resolution. And the best part is when the year starts, we actually have got a habit expert, Samuel Salzer. He's going to join us on the very first session to help us understand how do you actually stick to a habit and keep it, right? So thank you so much. Stay safe. The vaccine is here, but wear your mask till you are you got a shot, man. Wear your mask, guys. Stay safe. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Enjoy the festivities, guys. Good night. Good evening. Good day. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot for hosting. Thanks a lot. Bye.